As we said, the outgoing CEO of the Giants, Dave Matthews, has been good enough to join us. A pioneer of the Giants. He was appointed back in 2011. Of course, they came into the competition in 2012. This is their 15th season. Dave, you've always been so generous with your time on 3AW Footy. Welcome to our commentary box again. And as the finish line draws closer, what are the emotions coursing through the body when you reflect on a decade and a half in a pioneering position?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to come in and chat to you guys. And sorry I'm slightly late. Hit every red light coming from the airport. But look, mainly, it's been an amazing privilege to be able to have the opportunity to lead and build a club. And so, as I'm heading towards the end of the season and the transition to succession plan that we've got in place now with James Avery, I'm just really proud of what we've been able to achieve. It's not an easy task. It's a huge challenge and a huge opportunity, and I feel really privileged and proud of what we've been able to achieve in a short space of time.
So before we look back and also to some on-field issues, let's look forward. When it was announced you were leaving the Giants back in April, it was suggested that you might be taking on a part-time or some form of consulting role with the AFL. Can you tell us a bit about what you're going to be doing going forward?
Yeah, and that's confirmed, Caro. It's something I'd been discussing with Andrew Dillon for a few months in the lead up to finalising the decision. And when I look back, it was Andrew Demetrio who asked me to take the job on at the Giants when I was on the AFL executive at the time. And at that stage, it was going for 3 months, and I ended up staying 15 years. And, at the end of all that, I think, having been in the game for 28 years at head office and at a club, feel like I've still obviously got a lot of knowledge and experience. And so Andrew and I chatted about that. We're happy in Sydney, don't want to move back to Melbourne, don't necessarily want to work full-time in the AFL. I want to do other things as well, but pretty much a couple of days a week advising Andrew and his key exec team on some major things, including things like the collective bargaining agreement, probably a refreshed or revised look at the international strategy and other projects, and down the track potentially looking at what are the preconditions or the ideas around a 20th team if that's where the AFL want to go. Really excited about that.
So that's 3 Pacific areas, potentially a 20th licence, the forthcoming CBA, which is going to be massive, obviously, although it'll be fascinating because the media deal is in place till 2031. And then, of course, the international strategy with, the moment, all the rage is India. But back in the day, you were a big proponent for South Africa, something that the AFL just completely seemed to drop.
Yeah, I think when you look at the international, in places like the US, we've been waiting for cricket grounds to be built that could be suitable. In India, there's already those grounds. South Africa, there's that sort of infrastructure, but maybe not the commercial support. And look, the 20th team isn't a thing that gets raised or prioritised necessarily by the AFL. I guess what I've said to Andrew Dillon is, at a point in time when those considerations start, having built the Giants in foreign territory in a competitive market for 15 years, I'm happy to provide some input or advice on that. It's not a complete brief or instruction from either Andrew or Craig Drummond just yet, but certainly the discussions I've had with both Craig Drummond and Andrew Dillon have been, we've got a lot of exciting projects on the agenda, and we'd love to have you involved. So I'm really looking forward to that. But in saying that, I don't want to be totally locked back up in the AFL environment. I want to do some other things, which I'm working on as well at the moment.
Well, interesting. You've broken some news on 3AW, so you'll be joining the AFL in that role. I want to talk to you about Toby Greene and Tom Greene. And first, let's have a listen to what Toby had to say this week, speculating about his future.
I haven't had a good, proper conversation with them at all. So, Jez would obviously, he'd love me to play with him, and that would be awesome.
That'd be awesome to go and play with Chezza at Geelong. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it was awesome when they played together at the Giants. I mean, the thing is that, I think he's done quite a bit of media this week, Toby, and he's always entertaining and he always gives you something to talk about and listen to. I think the fact is that, as captain of the club and a foundation player, he's incredibly valuable to us. I expect he'll stay. and I don't think he's got to a decision just yet. But right now, all the things that he is concerned about, that a number of our players are concerned about, is what sort of shape's the club in, and it is in very good shape. What's the shape of the list? I think, notwithstanding we've had our injury issues this year, it's a list capable of challenging for premierships, which I know is important to him. And in the end, I think in this industry, you probably, or in any industry, you leave your boss more than an organisation. He's got a great relationship with Adam Kingsley. I think there's this romance about playing with Jeremy Cameron again, but I think the ultimate romance is for him to be a one-club player that wins the very first premiership at the Giants. So I think that opportunity's still in front of him, and there's some family considerations, but there's some family considerations for everyone living wherever they might live. So I hope and expect that he becomes a one-club player. He's incredibly important, I don't think, just to the Giants, but also the AFL. He really is the spirit of the club. And that's not to say that if he did make a decision to leave that we wouldn't celebrate him properly, but I do think that, that my expectation is he'll stay.
What about Tom Greene, who's spoken in the media this year about his fears if Toby did leave? He's been strongly linked to Tasmania. He's out of contract at the end of 2028. He's also been mooted as your next captain after Toby. Where do you see Tom's future?
I certainly think he can captain the club. He's got every attribute that you'd want in a captain, and really it was one of the most heartbreaking moments in the club's history when he did his knee. It was terrible right on the end of a great pre-season that he'd had, and setting ourselves up. Ian Callaghan and Clayton Oliver and others forming one of the better midfields in the competition, so that was disappointing. Look, I think Tasmania looms large just because of the sheer offers that you hear that they are going to make. And look, to be honest, my view is they need to make those. I don't think it's a super attractive proposition to go and play at Tasmania. I mean, my own view is it's a nice place to visit. I don't think it's an unbelievable place to have a career and live. And I think that, some of the hold-ups in relation to the infrastructure, I know Brendan Gale probably wouldn't like me saying this, but we're in a competition. I mean, by the time they get a stadium in place, it's probably 3 years into their tenure, and by that stage, a player like Tom Green's probably 31, 32. So, the money's one thing, but the opportunity, again, if you listen closely to what Tom Greene talks about, he wants to be a premiership player, and I also think at some point you'll see him captain the Giants.
Oh, okay.
Can I ask you about the West Sydney market a little bit? I mean, it's obviously very foreign AFL area. You get the NRL under your nose all the time up there, overseas, and the team's been successful, but then we talk about crowds and etc. But when you look at the two codes, the NRL has only had one team in the whole southern states, whereas we've got four in the northern states. What should we expect, say, of what the Sydney team does in that really difficult Western Sydney market?
It's a good question, Lee. I mean, it's a very, very competitive market in terms of winning the hearts and minds of young people, boys and girls, as their pathways are now, but just to get families to see the AFL as a habit. And I've got great admiration for what the Swans and the Lions have been able to build over a long period of time, and a lot of that comes off the back of on-field success. But I still see Sydney generally and Western Sydney in the context of the Giants as being huge opportunities for the AFL. And it's a generational decision, and growth does require patience, but I do think more so now than before, the AFL's understanding that the NRL is a very, very formidable sport, both culturally and from an entertainment point of view, and we've seen the recent result of their broadcast deal. So, the Giants and the Swans have got two huge roles to play, and both can become very big clubs in Sydney, and that's my expectation of the Giants over time. We've just got to win our share of what is a huge market, but it's a very diverse market. And I know Caro and I have chatted about this before. What it requires is a really significant and specific marketing investment, and those are the discussions we're having with the AFL right at the moment.
As an extension to Lee's question, after a decade and a half, are you happy at the level of cut-through that has been achieved? Do you think the people, even from headquarters to just the general footy fan in Melbourne, do they understand just how hard it is to cut through, particularly out in the west of Sydney?
I don't think necessarily in Melbourne they do, but I also understand that our crowds, for instance, get compared to 150-year-old clubs. We're only 15 years old in a market that we haven't been investing in for that long, but we're going to close in on 40,000 members this year. We sell out pretty much near on 5 of our 11 home games. The growth is going to come from those other games, obviously. But I do think when you look at the decision the AFL made with Andrew Demetriou to invest in this club and start the club, like right now we're pretty much third or fourth in the competition for commercial revenue. And we're down towards the bottom, as you'd expect us to be, in consumer revenue. But that's not to say that over time this isn't going to be a very, very big club. My own line of sight on it is eventually this will be a club as big as Geelong Footy Club, and in generations to come could be West Coast Eagles. So this is going to be a huge asset for the AFL competition, notwithstanding the competition that is around us. I mean, they're just the market conditions. I don't think that they're reasons or excuses not to persevere with what we're doing. I think we've got a huge opportunity as a code.
And we've debated this, you and I, on air before, so I'm going to take a slightly different tack with this question. Should there be more AFL football played in Canberra than just the 4 games from the Giants?
Well, at the moment it's 3 in a pre-season. I'd love to make it a 4th home and away game. I've said to Andrew Dillon in the AFL before that I think we don't play pre-season games or friendlies very well. I don't think they help us market the game. I'd prefer to have a pre-season game converted to a 4-point game. And I think the Tassie coming in lends itself to revisiting the fixture there. But certainly the role that we've played, and we've got a great partnership with the ACT government, is, I think, re-established the AFL as a really strong, having a really strong presence in the ACT in southern New South Wales. So much the way Hawthorn's played a role in Tasmania, I think we've been able to do that in Canberra. And I'd love to see more content there, but that requires more games.
So what's going to happen early next year? Because it's not your problem, but it's looking like the first 6 games you're not going to be able to play at NG Stadium, with the season starting later and the timing with the Easter show. Currently, I'm told that the Swans won't let you play any home games at the SCG unless it's against them, and the AFL can't intervene in that. And so they're talking about fixing up Homebush, spending a lot of money there. Where's the answer, Dave? Because that is surely a disaster at the moment for the Giants.
So the long-term view I'd have is that I think the AFL's got to make sure that Accor Stadium continues to have the possibility of configuring as an oval, and we're in discussions with Matthew Chun in relation to that at the moment, because I think
it's the old Olympic Stadium at home.
Yeah, and I think when we started the club, the idea would have been that both derbies were played there. And if that ground remained an oval and was upgraded, then into the future, even though the Swans would probably disagree, I think that's actually where the 2 derbies should be played. Ultimately, too, the other consideration is that the SCG is pretty run down. It looks better on television than it is when you're there. And I think the SCG is going to require significant investment. And when that occurs, the Swans are going to need another place to play. So I think it's really important that the AFL have the SCG, have NG Stadium, and work out what the future of Accor Stadium looks like. I think the complexities in the short term that you just talked about lend itself to actually making a decision about Accor sooner rather than later.
Oh, okay. So home games here potentially early next year.
Yep.
Dave, unfortunately we're out of time. As always, when we have you on 3AW Football, it'll be great to have a longer chat. No doubt we'll talk to you again before the season is out. Big game for the Giants. You're here tomorrow to complete the round against the Bombers. Obviously, can't really afford any more slip-ups between now and the wildcard.
No, that's right. I think we've had a funny year. We've beaten all the top sides and lose to sides below us, but that's probably why you're going tomorrow a little bit nervous. But we've had our injuries, we've had our headwinds, but I do know we've got every capability to push forward and make some finals and cause some problems. So hopefully we do.
Momentous decision made by the AFL Commission, Caro, during the week regarding Nicky Winmar, despite the legal process continuing, with the Winmar camp going to appeal the guilty convictions in his assault trial. He has been expelled from the Australian Football Hall of Fame.
He has. What's your understanding of where St Kilda is?
They've suspended him.
He's also in St Kilda's Hall of Fame.
St Kilda has suspended him from its Hall of Fame pending the completion of the legal process.
Okay, so we know that Barry Cable who had been charged with the assault of a minor. And all I remember now is that it went back earlier this year in April, and the judge dismissed all the charges, having previously been convicted. But the judge said it was due to lack of sufficient evidence, and that on balance he felt that the victim was probably telling the truth. Barry Cable remains out of the Hall of Fame. Wayne Carey seems to be the double standard situation that has been repeatedly reported this week, and that is something that has upset key members of the AFL Indigenous fraternity and sorority. So Wayne Carey pleaded guilty to indecent assault in 1997. He grabbed a woman's breast in Melbourne. There was an incident in Miami where Wayne Carey was convicted of battery on a police officer. I think it was involved kicking a female officer in the mouth. And then there was a local, there was a potential charge which involved glassing of Wayne Carey's partner of the time, but there was no charge ever went forward, and they were either withdrawn or they never happened. Now, this does put, I would have thought, the AFL Commission in a pretty difficult position. I'm not saying that it was wrong necessarily to remove Nicky Winmar from the Hall of Fame, although the fact that he's appealing is interesting. They didn't wait for the Cable appeal to make their decision. But why? I know Wayne Carey, they've said, won't become a legend as a result of those charges, but should he be in? Thoughts?
Leigh?
Oh, these things get very complicated, don't they? On terms of what particularly would cause the Hall of Fame expulsion. I mean, obviously the court case with Nicky Winmar, the guilty finding and the violence towards women part of it. So okay, that's the bottom line. But he is obviously still going back to court to appeal it, as Barry Cable did. So these kind of things, to be honest, I'm happy not to buy into because I don't know all the facts.
No, that's fair enough. But all I would say is I can understand why there's some concerns about double standards. I'm not suggesting there is any racism involved here, but is there recency bias towards Nicky Winmar because this incident happened last year? The original Wayne Carey situation, which was dreadful what he did in grabbing a woman's breast, but I don't think if Nicky Winmar is ultimately found guilty of this is as bad as that. But how do you compare? And then there were the other Carey misdemeanours. I mean, I sat on the Hall of Fame selection committee when Gary Ablett was up, and we had
comfortable with him going in?
No, I wasn't, and he did go in, and colleagues of mine on the Hall of Fame, Gary Ablett was never found guilty of assault, but he was present when a young woman died, and did he do enough at the time for Alicia Horan?
He was charged with drug offences off the back of that.
Yep, and the family of the young woman concerned, of Alicia's family, were devastated that Gary Ablett went into the Hall of Fame. Now, Gary Ablett, clearly on his football ability, is a legend of the Hall of Fame, but I felt uncomfortable with it. Others didn't. I remember there was, I think Mike Sheehan wrote a column in the Herald Sun as to why we all put him in, and I was uncomfortable about that because I hadn't been happy with the decision and I felt I was being included in something I didn't agree with. Don't disagree with Mike's right to an opinion.
Yeah, Gary Ablett's been in for 21 years now. He was inducted in 2005. Wayne Carey has been in for 16 years. He was inducted in 2010. Is there any conversation, is there any appetite amongst the AFL commissioners to look back at all of the inductees?
I have tried to talk to AFL commissioners over the last week and no one will comment. So I'm going to have another crack this week, but they're not commenting. Except they say they put out a statement regarding Nicky Winmar, and that's that. But I think it's something that will be concerning them, and I think that there are those. I don't think there are really people who think that Nicky Winmar should necessarily stay in, but I think there are a lot of people questioning about other people who are in the Hall of Fame, and it's so difficult. I mean, it's so difficult. How far do you go back, Bruce?
Oh, well, that's the unanswerable question, isn't it? Well, it's the question the AFL Commission needs to answer if they do want to if they do want to address it.
And what sort of debate took place? What role did Denise Bowden play, the AFL's Indigenous Commissioner, in the Nicky Winmar discussion? Did she have a view about Wayne Carey? Did any others on the Commission have a view? No one's prepared to talk about it at the moment. It's a highly sensitive situation. Maybe St Kilda have done the right thing. I've got absolutely no idea where this appeal is going to go, but no one is condoning violence against women. And if Nicky is guilty, I can understand why the decision was made.
Exactly.
But it's just... as Leigh says, it's very difficult to buy into, but I can understand why there's concern.
Tell me one part of it, Caro. I mean, the Indigenous, the fact that Nicky's Indigenous, what's that got to do with anything? So why would an Indigenous commissioner have a particular greater duty of having to look into it because she might be Indigenous too? Or the two things aren't related, are they? At all?
No, I tried to speak to quite a few commissioners, Leigh, not just Denise Bowden. I'm just interested in what sort of debate took place. And the only time that race comes into it, really, is the fact that Indigenous former footballers are very upset about this decision on the basis of Wayne Carey still being in and Nicky Winmar being out. That's why I'm interested in Denise
the
Bowden's
consistency
view.
part of it, yeah.
Were they the same? Like Barry Cable's Indigenous. Like, you're not drawing any link. The fact the only two expelled are both Indigenous.
No, I'm not. Right. But I can understand why Indigenous football people would be worried about the inconsistency. I'm not saying it's got anything to do with race. I simply say, why is Nicky out and Wayne Carey not? I think it's a fair question.
I was mostly surprised that the AFL expelled him before the legal process was completed, knowing that I'm not going to speak to his guilt or not. I'm mates with Nicky. He is a much better version of himself in the last 12 months now that he is no longer drinking. Not going to speak to what occurred 14 months ago. And if he is found guilty at the end of he's already been found guilty. If he loses his appeal, then he doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I was just surprised that the AFL haven't let the legal process be completed before making their final decision. Whereas the Saints, well, they've suspended him pending the result of the appeal.